importance of education in achieving inclusive growth. Government has over the years invested substantial resources in the development of skills for the country's workforce. Concerned with the decline in performance in the education sector, Madam Speaker, government adopted the Education and Training Sector Strategic Plan, ETSSP for short, in 2015, whose implementation is expected to address the quality, repeat, the quality of existing vocational education and training programs as a way of equipping the youth with appropriate skills. The ETSSP will also increase equitable access to education by intensifying the use of information communication and technology, ICT, in learning. Further, under the ETSSP, an early childhood policy framework will be developed to guide the implementation of early childhood care and development. Under health, Madam Speaker, government will continue to pursue avenues to improve the standard of health by continuously reviewing the policies and processes of delivering health in the country. One such avenue will be the implementation in 2016 of the medicines and related products supply chain strategy. The objective of this strategy is to ensure regular availability and rational use of essential medicines and provide quality assurance and security of health commodities throughout the supply chain. I now move to the thematic area of enhancing national security. Madam Speaker, our continued ranking as the least corrupt country in Africa in the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index is commendable. There's no other way. However, there is no room for complacency, given the negative impact of crime and corruption in our individual lives, as well as on the economy. In this regard, government regularly conducts audits in different areas such as recruitment and promotions processes, acquisition and distribution of drugs, and procurement of medical equipment with a view to identifying loopholes in the systems. Efforts by government in combating crime are yielding positive results, Madam Speaker, as indicated by the recent decline in some categories of crime. However, the country continues to be susceptible to security challenges, including, I'm informed, cybercrime. In order to address these challenges, initiatives are being put in place, particularly through provision of capacity building in investigation, intelligence, and forensics, as well as the recruitment of more security personnel and provision of transport and logistics. The last thematic area of strengthening local governance. Madam Speaker, with the close proximity to communities, local authorities play an important role in the delivery of services to the public, as we are all aware. It is for this reason that government is committed to strengthening and fostering their operations in providing local services and promoting local participation as part of the effort to create employment opportunities and eradicate poverty. Madam Speaker, in order to strengthen local governance, government developed the Local Economic Development Framework in 2015 in recognition of the potential for local authorities to drive economic growth. The LED, as it is called for short, initiative, is intended to enable communities to identify their development challenges and needs, understand their resource endowment, mobilize these resources, and take action to grow and diversify their local economies. This initiative is intended to have lasting outcomes on creating decent jobs and incomes for the communities, thereby improving the livelihoods of our citizens. In addition, government approved the strategy on private sector participation in land servicing in April 2015. Among the areas already identified for piloting this initiative include, I understand, Gerald Estate Block 1 in Central Business Districts in Francistown, Kasane, Ramotswa, and Khatlen District. Under this strategy, the private sector is expected to participate in land servicing. Meanwhile, the government will continue to undertake servicing of land in some districts by providing water lines, stormwater drainage, and debushing in order to facilitate plot development. Social welfare programs. Madam Speaker, in an effort to enhance the living standards of most vulnerable members of our society, government continues to provide social welfare programs. These programs are intended for the vulnerable groups such as the elderly, orphans, and people living with disabilities, and should not be confused with short-term relief measures such as Hipelege. This government is committed to ensuring that through the social welfare programs, people who fall under the vulnerable group category live in dignity. On the other hand, those people engaged under short-term relief measures are expected to graduate into sustainable employment opportunities, which is a necessary condition, I'm afraid, for reducing poverty. Nonetheless, government is committed to ensure the sustainability of these programs. Government is committed to ensure the sustainability of these programs through continuous evaluation of their effectiveness and better targeting of their beneficiaries. Madam Speaker, I now turn to reviewing budgets. And I will start with the 2014-15 budget out 10. Real, factual. Madam Speaker, total revenues and grants for the 2014-15 financial year amounted to 55.9 billion pula, an increase of 4.36 billion over the revised budget of the previous year. This performance was underpinned by the increase in mineral and Bank of Botswana revenues. Mineral revenues increased due to more than expected dividend receipts, while an extra amount of 1.7 billion was received from Bank of Botswana as additional dividends and residual income. Total expenditure and net lending, on the other hand, declined from the revised budget of 51.26 billion to 50.56 billion, mainly due to under expenditure in the development budget. As a result, the overall budget outturn for the 2014-15 financial year was a surplus of 5.34 billion pula, or 3.7% of GDP, which is significantly higher compared to the marginal surplus of 280 million that was projected in the revised budget. Madam Speaker, I nearly got my papers mixed up, but they're okay now. I now do a review of the 2015-16 revised budget estimates, the current financial year. Madam Speaker, the 2015-16 revised budget, for the 2015-16 revised budget, total revenues and grants of 51.76 billion represents a decrease of 3.62 billion or 6.5% from the original budget of 55.38 billion. The decline in total revenue is due to the fall in mineral revenue, which is expected to decrease by 1.85 billion. I'm talking about the current financial year, and you have all read about the performance of the mineral sector, especially the diamond sector, and therefore you should appreciate why I'm talking about these decreases. In addition, customs and excise revenue and value-added tax are also estimated to decline from the original budget by 885 million pula, and 1.17 billion respectively. The decline in the customs and excise revenue emanates from the appreciation of the pula against the rand. VAT revenue, on the other hand, declined due to unexpected substantial refund claims, especially from the mining companies. On the other hand, the revised total expenditure and net lending for 2015-16 is estimated at 55.96 billion, an increase of 1.81 billion from the original budget's estimate. This increase is due to supplementary funding of 423.36 million under the current budget and 1.39 billion for the development budget. Such supplementary funding having already been approved by this Honorable House. As a result, the revised 2015-16 budget shows a deficit of 4.2 billion pula, or negative 2.8% of GDP. With that, Madam Speaker, I now turn to the budget that we have all been waiting for, the 2016-17 budget proposals. Madam Speaker, at this juncture, I would like to present the budget proposals for 2016-17 financial year. I must emphasize that the proposed budget allocations were informed by the need to stimulate the economy and create job opportunities in line with the ESP objectives. In line with ESP objectives. The implementation of the ESP will be done prudently, I must emphasize prudently, to ensure continued fiscal sustainability. Special emphasis will be placed on phased implementation of government programs and projects, taking into account constrained fiscal space and available implementation capacity. This calls for strict discipline in utilizing available public funds by ministries and departments. Furthermore, it means that implementation capacity and expenditure quality must improve significantly to yield the desired outcome. Otherwise, less resources will be available for future economic activities. Revenues and grants for this year. Madam Speaker, total revenues and grants for 2016-17 are estimated at 48.4 billion pula, a decrease of 3.36 billion pula compared to the revised budget of 51.76 billion for the current financial year. Decrease. The reduction in the 2016-17 revenues compared to 2015-16 is a result of the projected fall of 6.9% in mineral revenues and 23.8% in customs and excise receipts. Recurrent budget for next year. Madam Speaker, the proposed ministerial recurrent budget for 2016-17 financial year amounts to 36.99 billion pula, an increase of just 290 million pula compared to the current financial year's original budget. The largest share of the ministerial recurrent budget is proposed for allocation to the Ministry of Education and Skills Development, with a budget of 10.64 billion, or 28.8% of the total. This substantial budget caters for, among others, teaching services wage bill, post-secondary bursaries, subventions to University of Botswana and other government-funded tertiary institutions, increased enrollment for the Botswana International University of Science and Technology, provision for examination costs, maintenance of institutional facilities, food for secondary school students, and utility costs for the various education facilities. The second largest share, Madam Speaker, of the ministerial recurrent budget of 5.75 billion, or 15.5% of the total, is proposed for allocation to the Ministry of Health. This budget will cover the cost of drugs, dressings, and vaccines, service charges, antiretroviral therapy, replacement of obsolete medical equipment, medical specialist fees, running costs for the new teaching hospital, and the establishment of the Medicine Regulatory Authority, among others. An amount of 4.99 billion, Pula being the third largest share, is proposed for allocation to the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. The bulk of this amount is mainly to cater for revenue support grants to councils, social protection programs, including the old age pension scheme, the orphan care program, and the destitute program, which includes, the latter includes the special Okovango destitute initiative. The fourth largest share is proposed for allocation to the Ministry of Defense, Justice and Security at 4.95 billion of the total, to cater for, among others, operational costs of Botswana Defense Force, Botswana Police, and Botswana Prison Services. And while dealing with the ministry responsible for justice, I wish to indicate that an effort was made, Madam Speaker, to allocate adequate resources to the administration of justice. But as in all other cases, resources are never enough. An amount of 2.02 billion Pula is recommended for the Ministry of Transport and Communications, which is the fifth largest share. This will cover maintenance of roads, as I indicated earlier, replacement of vehicles, upgrading of the government data network, subvention to Civil Aviation Authority of Botswana, as well as to Botswana Post. The sixth largest share of 1.1 billion is proposed for allocation to the Ministry of State President to cover, among others, service charges, program development costs of the Department of Broadcasting Services, printing costs, office rent, Vision 2016 Council, winding up expenses, and additional budget provision arising from the transfer of district administration and public enterprises evaluation and privatization agency to this ministry. Madam Speaker, the balance of 7.53 billion or 20.4% of the total